Hey everybody, it's Fine Art by Josh. I want to show you guys a quick tutorial video on how to prep your canvas so that way it's silky smooth and easy to paint on before you get started. Okay, let's get started with a material list. It's cheap but effective. Sanding paper or sanding blocks. I prefer the sanding blocks, 120 grit and 220 grit. A painting knife paint scraper thingy. Not really sure what this thing's called. You can pick it up at a hardware store. A sponge brush. I prefer the 3-inch. They're really cheap. 4 squares cut from a 2x4. At least that's what I use. You can use whatever you want. Okay, first things first, you're going to grab your blocks or your books or whatever you chose. Whenever you put them under your canvas, you want to make sure not to put them flush with the canvas, but to put them more toward the center. Well, not the center, but like an inch to maybe half an inch from being flush. So that way, whenever the gesso falls over the edge, it doesn't get on the blocks and causes your canvas to stick to the blocks. Okay, and then you want to get your sandpaper blocks or your sandpaper, whichever you chose. And you want to start with the lowest number. So you want to start with the 120 because that is your more coarse sandpaper. And you want to just go back and forth and make sure you get all the bumps and everything off of it. It doesn't take much. You don't have to scrub it like you're trying to scrub your dishes or something. Just very easily go over it lightly and it should get everything off. And then you want to switch to the 180, or I'm sorry, the 220 grain, and do the exact same thing. Okay, and then you just want to wipe the dust off with your hand or with a brush or something. And already at this point, if you don't have gesso, I mean, this is a good alternative, just sanding your canvas. It makes it really smooth. The gesso I use is the Liquitex Professional. It is by far my favorite gesso that I've used. I haven't had any issues with it. I just make a pile of it in the middle and guess about how much I need to use. There's no real formula to it. Then you want to get your paint scraper thingy and just level out the gesso on your canvas and try to make it as even as possible and thin. You don't want it to be real thick. And the reason I start with the paint scraper thingy is because it's large and I can cover a large area real fast. And if I have too much gesso, all I have to do is just press down harder and it scrapes up a lot of gesso and I can get that thin layer with it. With this, it's really hard to get the corners. That's why the next thing I do is use the sponge brush. Maybe next time I can do a video using maybe a brown gesso or something so that way you guys can see it a lot easier. Okay, and then you want to grab your sponge brush and just go over it over and over and make it as even as possible. I normally go one direction all the way across, and then once I've done that, then I'll switch and go the other direction. So I'll start horizontal and then I'll go vertical or vice versa. And you want to make sure to touch up the corners, especially whenever you're doing this with the sponge brush. Then make sure that you get any gesso that went on the edge and just try to make it even on the edges as well. And sometimes if you have too much gesso, you'll have it overflow off of the canvas and it'll build up underneath the canvas. So make sure to clean up any of the buildup, because if it dries like that, then you'll have a really unprofessional quality to your canvas on the back of it. And then after you do the sides, you want to go over the top again. It's really tacky at this point, and you don't put any pressure. You just use the weight of the brush to smooth the gesso a little more. This doing it at this point, with it being as close to dry as it is, it's really good for getting the brush strokes out and making it real smooth. Okay, guys, that's pretty much it. I mean, all you do from this point on is just repeat the process. Sand it again, gesso, smooth. Let it dry, sand it again, gesso, smooth, however many times you want.